Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this penultimate lecture in the fall 2023 architecture lecture series. It's really great to see a full room, the entire school community, but also I want to take the opportunity in particular to welcome our guests from outside of the School of Architecture. Please come back for our other lectures and events. They're all free and open to the public, and we welcome your participation and feedback in all of our programs. Tonight, we are excited to welcome our speaker, Fabrizio Barozzi of Barozzi Veiga. An acclaimed architect, he studied architecture at the Istituto Universitario di Architettura di Venezia and went on to complete his degrees in Seville, Spain, and France at the École d'Architecture de Paris La Villette. Together with Alberto Veiga, he co-founded Barozzi Veiga in 2004 in Barcelona. Barozzi Veiga is known internationally for its cultural, civic, and educational buildings. They combine familiar architecture drawn from the surrounding context with new interpretations and contemporary materials. Often located within historic contexts, their projects speak to their local communities, all while redefining simple architectural elements, such as the proportions of windows and doors, or the slope of roofs or other surfaces. Their buildings are very simple and very elegant, playing with the fundamental architectural elements of transparency and opacity, reminding us also that the classical language of architecture in some ways never gets old. Indeed, their new building for the Fine Arts Museum in Chur, in Switzerland, came from a close study of renovations by Peter Zumthor, as well as an in-depth analysis of the original building's Palladian proportions. And one of my own personal favorites, the rugged roofline of the Philharmonic Hall in Szczecin, Poland, draws directly from its neighboring buildings, while its white materiality gives the appearance of a futuristic structure, almost like a photomontage in the middle of the city. For this particular project, the firm received the Miss van der Rohe Award for European Architecture, the International FAD Opinion Award, and the Life in Architecture Award, in addition to numerous awards for other projects too. The office has contributed to several international exhibitions, and a selection of their drawings is also part of the permanent collection of the Centre Pompidou in Paris. So they not only build beautiful buildings, they also build and make beautiful drawings too. After tonight's lecture, Carlos Jimenez will kick off our question and answer portion with the very first question. And for those interested in the AIA continuing education credits, we will have a sign-up sheet, probably with Tara, available later today for you to get those credits as well, because we don't want anybody to lose their license over not having enough continuing education credits. So please make sure to see Tara for those. So without much more ado, Fabrizio, thank you for being here tonight. We are all looking forward to what you have in store for us here. And please join me in welcoming Fabrizio to the podium. Benvenuta.
Good evening to everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight with you and have the opportunity to present to you some of our work. So thank you very much, Professor Jimenez, for the invitation. And I think it's always really pleasant for me and for Alberto, my partner, which is unfortunately today is not able to stay with you here in Houston, but to have the opportunity to present some of our works. Before the lecture, I had a very interesting talk with some of students, and they asked me a lot of very interesting questions. So I don't know exactly how to start my presentation tonight because many things have already been said with them. No? But I think that with the presentation of some works and some also recent projects, I would like to give you a sense, a general idea of what we have done and what we are doing currently. So, as the Dean mentioned, we are based in Barcelona. I'm Italian, Alberto, my partner, in Spanish. We mostly worked with competitions since the very beginning in international scale. I think we really feel Europe as our home. No? We really feel I think we are European architects. No? I think we are part of a generation that since the beginning had the opportunity to work abroad. And in a certain sense, I think this story, this biography of our office has marked also our way of work. No? The fact that since the beginning we worked abroad, many different countries, make us reflect about certain important idea. Since the very beginning, the notion of specificity has been a very critical, important thing. I think all our work is an attempt to intensify and highlight the diversity of the different places, the different realities. In a certain sense, I think our work is an attempt to reject a generic architecture. I really think that working in relationship with the context, the different reality, try to create an intimate relationship with the specificity of the different places is really a constant of our work. Maybe the title of today's lecture could be on continuity. I think the idea of continuity, understood in a broader sense, is a central element, another central element for our idea. We always want to work in continuity with something. This means to work in continuity with the traditions, try to understand that our buildings are part of a story and is a new step in a history in some way. It means try to give a continuity with the context, try to be in continuity with the specificity of the different place, highlight the difference as I'm meaning. So I think this idea to find or work with identitary elements that characterize a precise place and transfer it to a new project and to put them at the base of a new narrative for a project, I think these are a basic idea that guide all our work. I always explain that, and I think and I hope that the work that I will present are an example of this aptitude. What we're trying to find is a balance between the specificity of a place and the autonomy of the form. This is really the paradox or the contradiction that guide our work. No? We really wanted to create, of trying to find this intimate and deep relationship with the context, understood in a broader sense. So in a context, there's no only one reality. There are many realities. There's a physical reality, there's an imaginary reality, there's a climatic reality. So we really wanted to root all our building into this context. But at the same time, we are very aware that architecture is as a value per se. It's an object, it's an element that should have a meaning also away from the context that permit to bring it. No? So in the middle of this paradox or this double reality, it's, I think, where our work is based in some way. No? And I think the works that I will present tonight are example of this aptitude. All the projects we have done are just a continuous, obsessive research about this topic in some way. So tonight I will present 3 works and 2 recent projects. The 3 works that I selected, but I not selected really, but are the projects that are currently presented in the permanent collection at the Centre Pompidou. So, and I think the selection that they made, I think really represent, I think, a little bit the work that we have done during the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. And the first project I will present, it's really a capital project for us. It's an important project that we did several years ago. And it's an important project because mark really a kind of a methodology of work that later follow with other projects. It is a philharmony in Szczecin, as I mentioned before. Szczecin is a small city in Poland, very close to Berlin. And this is an image that I took from the office that we rented there during the construction site. It is a city that has been completely demolished, devastated during the Second World War. And now the city is a kind of patchwork of different elements. There are blocks of socialist housing, there are big monumental, let's say how to mark it here, no? There are this kind of church, the castle, the housing from 60 and 70. It's a kind of hybrid context in some way. And the place in which we have built the Philharmony is the same place in which before there was the old Philharmony that was destroyed during the Second World War. As I said before, for us it's really important that the project is a specific element able to create an intimate relationship with the context. And doing the Philharmony for us means confront the project with these situations. With this situation, and also with this other situation. This is an original drawing of the building that is on the side of the Philharmony. It's our closest neighborhood. And it is quite representative of the architecture of this part of north of Poland. No? It's a public building. It speaks about mass. It speaks about verticality. It speaks about the presence of the steeped roof, pinnacles, and other decorative elements. So, and in some way, all this, what we like to do, or I think the method or the methodology that we work, in many cases, is work by analogies in some way. No? We really like to work with what we have found, also by the circumstance or the contingency of the different places. And in some way, all these elements that appears already in this kind of original architecture are passed through the filters in some way of our personal obsessions in some way, and are being transformed and manipulated in a new project. And this model of the Philharmony, it's made of the same ingredient that exist in some way in the context. We didn't had other elements, but just we transform what we have simply found in a place. And this for us is a way of explain this idea of work in continuity with something. No, this is a building that wants to be part of a tradition that exists in this city. It's still a building that speak about mass, verticality, roofs, pinnacles, the same element that exists in the context, but filtered with another interpretation. In a sense, all the elements that appears in this building, not the building that I showed you before, are again here. No? In order to give continuity to something, it is important that exists also a gap in some way. The tradition, it doesn't move in a linear way, but is necessary in order to make it continuous, to create a gap, a new step in some way, an interpretation. No? And this is what we have tried to do in this building. For sure, when you, as I mentioned before, a reality is not just a physical reality, but there are different reality in a place, and something maybe expressionist exists also in this building, no? And relate the building with a certain history of architecture that appears in that geography in some way. But this relationship with the tradition, it is not a nostalgic thing, not at all. We select or we manipulate or we think we work with element that we found, but without nostalgia. In fact, we took certain element and then modify in a very clear way the materiality of the new building in some way. The Philharmony interpreted the singularity and the expressiveness of the steeped roof that mark the skyline of the city, and it is the main character of the new building. It is also the main character of the building because from far away the Philharmony is visible, so it is visible only the upper part because there is a kind of green crown around the building. No? And this is another reason why we work with just this element. Apparently, the building is quite complex, but it's not like that. It's a very, very simple and clear architecture. We strived really to solve the complexity of a program, of a context, in the most simple way. I think there is a moment in all the project in which just a few architectonical elements are able to solve the complexity. And this is the moment in which we found our way. No? So the program of the Philharmony is solved by a crown that fulfill the site that we have. This crown has all the technical element, vertical connection, etc., etc. It creates a kind of free space inside of the building, which is really a new public space inside of the building, and inside of this crown floating the two chambers in some way, the symphonic hall and the hall for chamber music. So maybe I think all our projects started reflecting about how to create public space. In many cases, our architecture are just the frame of the public. I think in the other project that I will present, you will understand better this condition. Here, in this project, we didn't have the opportunity to work with the urban space around the building. So what we have tried is to manipulate the public area of the Philharmony, the foyer, the connection, the vertical connections, in order to create a kind of interior covered plaza, no? in which you can host events, other activities. No? This space is a very simple space. It's just characterized by the vertical skylight that introduce the light from the roof, the main connection that permit to move around the entire building in a loop, no? And the verticality of the element, and the rest is made in a very, very simple way. So the main program of the Philharmony was the Symphonic Hall, no? And has been really a challenge reflect about how to build a symphonic hall for classical music. At the beginning, the idea was to build this symphonic hall just for chamber music. And again, what we have done has been try to put our work in line with in continuity with a tradition. So we really reflect about the historical symphonic hall from the East Europe, no? And try to interpret this tradition in a new way. So the section, it's a section of a very classical and simple symphonic hall in which we try to have a flat roof in order to achieve the best acoustic. And what we thought is that probably starting with a detail, which is a very technical detail because it's made by different planes which are inclined in some way, and it is like this for very precise acoustical reason. So started with this element, we had the opportunity to build the entire symphonic hall. So the hall is a kind of ornamentation of in a big scale, in a large scale. And this also remit or allude or resonate with a certain tradition of this historical concert hall from the East Europe. But what is interesting in this condition is that this, let's say, large ornamentation, in reality, it's a fantastic technical machine that permit to achieve the best acoustic, no? And when an element which is ornament became a technical element, is no more an ornament in some way, is something different in some way. And this element, the concert hall, is a kind of jewel put in the middle of this very abstract building. Again, working with the specificity of a place is not only to work with physical element, but also to interpret the constructive tradition that exists in a place. In this case, the concert hall is a very sophisticated artisanal work. The entire symphony hall is made in wood, covered by small piece of synthetic golden leaf that has been applied by hand during more than 1 year and a half. But in that place in Poland, there was a tradition, there was still people able to do this job, no? And so we tried to also build something that can take advantage of from the constructive method that exists in a place. As again, it's another way to, let's say, renovate traditions. Mm-hmm. So these are some other views. And for example, another important element is that we try to introduce natural light at the extreme of the symphony hall, and this for two reasons. Because so traditionally, this type of hall had natural light, and also the natural light is an element that permit really to make the wall, to make vibrant the wall, no? And the materiality of the golden reef is very sensitive to the light. No? It permits to really add a degree of expressiveness to the concert hall. As I mentioned before, so we try to work in line, in continuity with a tradition, but without nostalgia. In fact, all the building, the facade of the building is made with it's a kind of sophisticated facade made with vertical metallic element, and behind we have several layers of translucent glass, and permit to manifest the presence of an interior activity, especially during the concert moment in the late evening. No? So it's an element to manifest to the ceiling the presence of activity there. And manifest also the ambition of the project to to be a starting point of a larger renovation of a quarter that was a little bit abandoned. And this last image shows how, I think this shows quite clear what I intended to explain at the beginning. It's an element that is specific for the place because it's, let's say, it's still element of the context, it reinterpreted, it creates a new narrative, but at the same time, it's a very autonomous element, no? That has a meaning, has its own internal rule, let's say like this, that permit to highlight its own value, no? In spite of the context. No? I think this general view explain, I think, visually quite well this contradiction or the paradox in which we want to place our work. Years later, we, for most than a decade, we worked in Switzerland. We had the opportunity to win several important competitions for 2 fine art museums and Academy of Dance in Zurich, and tonight I will present the 2 museums. And I think this period that we passed working in Switzerland has been very, very formative for us, very important, because it has been a period in which we, I think our first part of the project were more, let's say, contextualist in a way, also the building we made in Spain, and step by step we has been more aware about the objectual quality of the architecture. So this Fine Art Museum, the project for the Fine Art Museum was an extension of this historical building. The name of this building is Villa Planta. It is a kind of eclectic building because it has been built in the 18th century, inspired by Palladio. It's a very a building that is inspired by the La Rotonda de Palladio, and in 1982 has been transformed and renovated by Peter Zumthor, and he added the 2 winter garden and transformed the basement for temporary exhibition. So in that case, was not the city our, let's say, partner for the project, but was this element, no? This pre-existing building. And this building was quite eclectic because at the entry there are 2 sphinx around. There is a kind of romantic garden, no? And this is because it was a residence for a rich merchant that imported textile for Egypt, and the decorative elements that exist are very, very orientalistic in some way, no? As an homage to that country. So this kind of eclectic condition, the eclectic condition of the building has been really a starting point also for the new project, how to confront with this situation. So here is an image of the interior that presents really this delicate filigrane that conform the interior, and this orientalistic motif that conform the original building. So when we started the project, this is the plan of the Villa Planta, the original building, clearly remarked in a double symmetry. So we started to think that was important to confront our proposal not only with this element, but with a kind of ideal, no? And the ideal of the precedent of this building is the La Rotonda by Palladio, no? So we started to understand the project as a diptych, no? Again, reuse the same element of the pre-existing and transforming it into the new proposal. So what we have done is a very simple proposal. This is the extension that in some way work with the same element. It's a double symmetry. Again, it's the geometry is extrapolated from the original. And again, it's a very simple building that is conformed by just the two cores, one private and the other public, that contain a public space, this small foyer. So it is a neo-Palladian building with a kind of, let's say, bas relief in the facade that resonate with the decoration of the historical building. No, it's again, it's a ambiguous element. No, that it works in continuity with what we had. No, it's specific, very specific for this place, but at the same time, very autonomous. What we have done in order to create this type of relationship with these two elements has been to reduce at the maximum the footprint of the new building, now in order to, again, to have this kind of mineral garden or podium around the building and trying to find the perfect fit for the new building into the context. No? For us, it was very important to understand that the two elements should create one unity, one precise unity. So, and the space here around, which is maybe for you is not very important, in reality has been crucial for the project. Has been absolutely crucial because it permits to make the building breathe inside of the building, inside of the context, and have the right relationship with the historical building and the context. No, so you can see here, and again, and it's a kind of important thing. This maybe here is not very evident, no, like in other projects, but first we really try to organize, let's say, the public space, and then the architecture just the result of this strategy. In order to create this precise relationship with historical building, we organized the program in a very radical way. So we decided to put underground all the temporary, the gallery, and keep above just the public space, and then connected the building in the lower level, so here in the basement, without touch the historical building with any kind of element. So the foyer declare the relationship with the historical building. From here there is a quite generous concrete stairs that move the visitor down, no? And when you enter in the gallery is a very neutral space. But here in the level -1, you discover this Palladian influence very clearly. This plan, no, composed by a sequence of different rooms, very well proportioned, it's exactly the same of a Palladian scheme in some way. It's a combinatory sequence of rooms, no? And the organization of this, it reminds to the precedents here for this physical precedents, but also with this ideal architecture in some way. So we are working in continuity with the reality, the physical reality, but also the history of architecture. Some images of these spaces in which we put a lot of attention of the artificial light. And then here there is the connection with the spaces renovated by Peter Zumthor. The lower level show this attempt that we always do in order to reduce architecture at just what is necessary. We don't want to add any kind of superfluous element. So here we have just the two cores and a wall that protect this space. And the rest is a free space for temporary exhibition that could be divided and modified as the curator want. Again, we try to solve the complexity, and I can assure you that make a fine art museum is not a simple task with the most simple element, but very, very precise element. And these are some other images of this space in the second basement. As I say to the student before in my talk, I think we don't have a preferred material, but we understood the materiality of the projects as an element that can intensify an intimate relationship with the context, with the atmosphere of a place, with also the materiality of a place. So I think for this reason, every project has its own materiality in some way. In that case, the opportunity, or also we worked a lot with the facade of the building, because for us it was very, very important that this kind of filigrane or bas relief allude or resonate with the other ornamentation that exists inside of the historical building. And again, we worked with the specificity of this place. We were based here in Switzerland. They have a wonderful knowledge about how to work with concrete. So we has been able to make the entire facade in prefab concrete with a very, very big panel of concrete, in which we has been able to have a very precise detail, less than 1 centimeter, in this element. But again, this element, every element of the project should have more meaning. This is not only a conceptual element, but it's also a very technical element that permits to create this filter from the light for the upper part, and also to hide all the technical elements. Also, we continue to reinforce this idea of the detail also in the loading, the door for the loading lock, in which we carved the steel in the same way of the rest. There is a detail, but an important detail. These images show this very precise building made by a double symmetry. You can see and discover the plinth that hide the rest of the building underground, and there is a dissonance. This dissonance is this element, is the loading dock, and is a kind of important element, because in order to reduce the footprint, what we propose it's also to use the foyer as a loading dock. And this is a kind of very radical decision because it's a way to find synergy between programs that apparently are completely opposite. But this also is an element that permits really then to liberate and create public space around the building. More or less in the same year, we worked for another fine art museum in Lausanne, a completely different project. Cour is it's a small building, it's a kind of precise relationship with the president. Here the project was about to transform a very large area here, more than 2.5 hectares, in the middle of the city. This is the train station, this is part of the city. Here the city center and the Lac Le Mans. This place was completely forgot, and so it was an area. It was an area dedicated to the maintenance of trains. So this is the entire area, and there was different buildings. And this one was probably the most interesting one. It's a building from 1911, not with any kind of particular architectural quality, but let's say it was the oldest one in this area. So the project was about to locate in this area not only the Fine Art Museum, but the three major museums of the city: the Museum of Design, Museum of Photography, and the Fine Art Museum. For many months, we really tried to how to manipulate, reuse, transform all these historical elements. But at some point, when we looked at the diagram, there was the actual situation with the area fulfilled of this element. We started to think that for this project wasn't enough to transform an element, but we really was important to define a urban strategy. So gradually we move our attention from the object to the city, and we started to look at references in which the urban and the architecture are blended in some way. This is the Uffizi in Florence. You don't know if the Uffizi is the plaza and the architecture create the plaza, or of the opposite. So, and in this early drawing, you start to see how our focus has been moved not in the building, but in the central core. This elongated esplanade that could be linked with the plaza in front of the train station, and really organize the new quarter for art as a part of the city, and link this new quarter with the city. And so, and we solved the project again in a very precise way. We just put the three elements. This is the Fine Art Museum and the other two museums. And at the core of the proposal, there is this long esplanade, that link this area, that it is actually a cul-de-sac with the city center. In another step, a year later, during the construction and with a second competition, the two museums are being condensed in just one element, and this process of simplification of the place has been finalized. So here, and so the core was the public space, and the building, the Fine Art Museum, arrived after this decision in a very easy way. We understood the museum as an elongated wall, as an inhabited wall, able to divide the new public space from the world of train here. So, and these sketches, the first sketches, you can notice how the building had just this wall that is confront with the landscape of the mountain on the back. And the building, as I say, arrived very, very easy. Just this kind of sequence of elements that create this elongated wall from one side, very porous and active towards the plaza, and you will see very opaque from the other part. But from the other part, you can notice also that the building start to appear like an industrial element, like a fabric, a big fabric in some way. And again, this is the reason this aptitude of the project here was really to be in line, in continuity with this kind of industrial atmosphere that was present in this area. This area was essentially an artificial space platform in the middle of the city, which is very inclined, dedicated to maintenance, trains, etc., etc. So this important urban, I think when you have the opportunity to make this kind of big urban transformation, you don't have to lose the quality and the character of this reality, And so, and this is a building which is resonate with this industrial condition that were present in this site. Again, is this kind of building which is in the middle between contextualism and abstraction in some way. This is another view from the opposite part, in which you notice that the building continues with the building with the train station, no? And in a similar way, it's another element of a sequence of big infrastructure that are deposited along the trains in some way. When we decided for this urban strategy, we also decided to remove a big part of the historical building. The historical building didn't have a big quality, but we started to ask how to preserve the memory of a place, even if it is necessary to remove a part of it. So we started to understand that we can continue to be related with the memory of a place. Not only you can have this continuity of the memory of a place, not only keeping the entire building, but just a constellation of fragments. And in particular, we preserve this small fragment here, which is probably the most important element of the original building, and we transform this element in the main protagonist and the figure that characterize the entire new building in some way. This is a small element, but absolutely crucial for the entire project. So, and you have to notice these windows, which is facing south, a very big windows, very expressive, very emotional also, because it's the only element in which filter the light, then has been transformed into the main element of the new foyer. The relationship between this pre-existing element and the new building is very classic in some way. It's the figure and the background in some way. From this side, the museum is very opaque for security reason. We wasn't allowed to open any window towards the train for security reason. We had the opportunity just to open the foyer and this small element here. From the other side, this building, the preservation of the memory of the site passed to the preservation of the floors of the other building that conform the new public space. And this building appears, it's a little bit enigmatic, no? You can notice it's very close, very opaque, very industrial, but the reality is that behind this vertical element, the facade is very open, very opaque. The ground floor, I think it's completely open in some way. And this permit to understand the interior of the building as an extension of the plaza inside of the museum. So this small element is not a minor element, but the crucial element, because permit to insert the new foyer and then start the rhythm of the entire building. We remark the entry into this sequence of vertical element with this porch. No? When you enter here, you have to cross this compression, and then you arrive to the big foyer, illuminated with lightning with the light from the roof, and the historical element. So the windows that I showed you before has been transformed into this new element. And again, I think this is exactly what is a visual explanation for what I intend to work in continuity with a story, with our traditions. No? In order to perpetuate the tradition, it is necessary that exists a gap in some way, an interstice. No? So this element became really the capital, the main compositive element of the new foyer. Another view of this quite very high space with the natural zenithal light. And then the building is very pragmatic, no? The foyer divide the building in two parts for temporary exhibition, permanent exhibition, and there is another cut in this small window that I show you before. Around the central foyer there are two stairs that bring you up and permit to create the building it is very flexible because you select where you can move. And this is the first floor in which you start to understand the structure of the building. The public area are with this kind of mineral materiality, and this here you can start to see the function of this vertical line, which is essentially our brise soleil that filter the northern light into the building. No? And then you enter in the gallery in which we modify the materiality in order to permit to present contemporary art, but also, let's say, classical art. This is the reason why we worked with wood, and here you can see also the windows on the right. At the other there is another cut that permit to establish a relationship with the geography. Is the other element in which you can see outside. No, from one side, when you arrive here, you have a beautiful view towards the lake, and when you are from the top, you can see the new plaza of the Quartier of Art. This image was taken during the construction, so it's not finished. This element exactly is the only that appears in facade. The other are covered by this brise soleil, but this, because it's a public element that establishes the relationship with the geography, it's evident in the facade. And in the upper floor, you, again, like in Cour, you can understand that this very quite big building is more than 150 meter long. No, it just solved with 5 cores, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cores, no, that create the structure of the building, but also divide the program. The upper floor is characterized by the skylights, which create a main feature. This is a very, very sophisticated and technical element, but we have tried to solve it, to present it in a very effortless way. No? It's like a ceiling that floating above this huge exhibition gallery. These are some other elements of this space. The entire building is made by brick in order really to give with this socle and the windows are all in situ concrete in order to give to the project this kind of fabric condition, no? And related with this other industrial building that were present in this building. And to conclude quickly the presentation, 2 recent projects that we are doing now. One is the extension and transformation of an historical abbey in Belgium for a visual art museum. The place is located in Kortrijk. It's a small city very close to Brussels, and actually this building is under construction. So in this historical map, you can notice here's the old abbey in which there were the chapel here, and then the park of the abbey. This building suffered a lot of transformations during the period, and here you can see the abbey. No, with this is the chapel, and these are the other element. And here you can notice a very aggressive intervention that has been made in the 60s. No? So here it is the chapel. This is another chapel from the 19th century, and the dorms, which is probably the most valuable part of this abbey. And here you can notice this very, very aggressive in concrete building in which transformed the Abbey in the 60s, and then the rest has been transformed in a park. So the idea was, the project was about to transform the Telem in the new visual art museum for the city. And yeah, here you can see an image of the dorms, which is a listed building, very, very beautiful, and part of the historical wall. And here you can notice a little bit the insertion that made in 62 or 60 or 63. So we had to confront our project with this building. What we have done is very, very simple. We just understood that the building grow with this sequence of elements, the historical chapel, another element of the 19th century, the dorms, and we just another element, so simple like that. So we just added a new element that already exists and try to insert it in a very sensible and precise way. And this model shows the new pavilion, no, that is placed in this position because ended the sequence of this pavilion, reconform the historical cloister that has been destroyed in the 60s, and then can announce the presence in the middle of the park. So, and this plan, now you can see, we exactly had in this element. But also, there is a, like in Cour, in order to activate and to create this very sensitive relationship with the historical building, we had the two galleries that they asked underground under this courtyard and in the other courtyard. So this is a view when you arrive from the park. This building is made in brick, in a very dark gray brick, handmade, in order to try to have the same, let's say, condition of the roof of the historical building. And the proposal just a shell, in this case, that permit to create a city living, a place, let's say, for everything, for events, for present art, or to have a bar, or whatever. No? So again, this element is a, let's say, new pavilion that aspire to be in continuity with the historical one. And this is a view from the courtyard. We had this space, and here we renovate the chapel, and here we just added one core in order to permit functioning. The interior of, this is an image we prepared for the competition. It's just a kind of, the idea was to create a city living. A city living is a little bit of strange program. It's a place for everything, like a living room for the city. And this is the chapel that has been transformed for the permanent gallery. The lower level, you discover the secret of the project. Again, the two galleries connected under the historical building, in order really to reduce the scale of the proposal. So here the three main spaces: the chapel, the new gallery, and the pavilion. There's a typical gallery, nothing explained, and some images which are this very complicated intervention in which we pass under the historical building in order to create the two galleries. The last project is an important project, and I just 5 minutes more to conclude the presentation. This, I hope, it will be our first building here in US. After a very long selective process, we have been commissioned to create the new Ulight Arts in Miami. Ulight Arts is a no-profit foundation dedicated to support young artists. Essentially, they try to give to artists a studio or offer them classes, etc., etc. Now, currently, they are located in Lincoln Road in Miami Beach, and they wanted to create their new headquarters, the new foundation, in a quarter in the north of Miami, in a quarter called Little River. So this is an aerial view of the new site. The site is this one, very elongated, sit along the train line. The train line move here and move line. So what is noticed that is placed in the middle of so along the train, there is a very, let's say, harsh environment populated by warehouse essentially. And here we have the typical suburb area. In this area we have a lot of vegetation, and this area was very, very harsh and hard without vegetation, all warehouses. This is an image of the site currently occupied by these warehouses. And these are some images of the context. The site is here and there. So as I explained to the student before, for us, this project was really a challenge because we were used to work in a very consolidated context in which you have references, in which you have material. And here we started to work in a very, very different condition, in a kind of a generic suburban area. So we started to ask ourselves how to facing this condition. And these are the sketching we presented during the competition phase, in which wasn't exactly a competition, was more a design approach phases. And so we started to explain the client that was important a building able to create a community. So the foundation really to want to create a community of artists, to create a sense of community between the artists and also the neighborhood. So working with an enclosed garden, working with vegetation, which is absolutely absent in this area, probably was a good strategy. So these are very, very initial sketches before to know nothing about the proposal. We started to understand also because of the program essentially is our spaces for artists, a small atelier for artists, a gallery, etc., etc. Could be organized as a collection of small room, everyone with its own character, no? In which you can have, I don't know, the gallery or the theater, the gallery or the studios, etc., etc. And this collection of rooms could be organized along this kind of interior garden, not taking advantage of the wonderful vegetation that Miami has. And these are other sketches. So we started to envisioning that something can happen on the two sides to create a kind of sense of enclosed, have some vertical element. These are other sketching we started to envision in that problem. We create a kind of, because of the site, we can create a kind of promenade that permit to enter to the different studios and have a kind of connection also with the street or with the train. We did all this sketching without knowing nothing about the proposal, but there was a very precise and beautiful moment in which we realized that we could compose the project using just a cell, just a very archetypal element. A studio for an artist is just a room with a skylight that bring, or a window that bring northern light into the studio. So, and this was a kind of epiphany for us, because instead, how we can confront our project to this new contextual condition? To create, instead of creating an object, try to create a place. In this project for us was really much more important to create a place, a context which was felt, than an object. So we started to envisioning that adding this very basic, simple element, we could create a landscape, no? An artificial landscape. So we started to make it test, reorganize it, no, with all the function, no, and this was the first study model we did, in which you can notice that there is a plinth, no, this kind of enclosure that contains all the elements, and the sequence of small towers that were skylight in some way. No? So we understood that starting with this cell, the studio of the artist, that every time is composed by the skylight and a window that relate the studio with the garden, this public garden inside of the building, we were able to create and regular and dispose it elongated along this path. We were able to create an artificial landscape, no? Create a context in some way, a context that doesn't exist there. And suddenly, again, all our projects are a reflection about the public space. And this is really about to create a public space inside of the building, because this garden will be public, to create a sense of intimacy and create community for the artists, but at the same time is very permeable from all the other side. And it is an element that probably can resist when there will be built other building around. So, and at the very end, the building appears like a village for artists, a small village, and it again works by analogy with the downtown at the end. It's a kind of downtown in a small scale. It's a little bit an enigmatic building. You don't know exactly what's happening inside. No, you have the feeling you want to enter through the doors and discover what's happened there. No, and really it's about to create a place more than an object. These are some other views from the trains. At the beginning, but during the development of the project, appears something very important. At the beginning, all these elements were just skylight. But working to be specific for a place means also to create an architecture very specific for the climate in which it's placed. So we started to understand that all these elements, this small tower, could create a kind of bioclimatical system that permits a passive ventilation of all the spaces. So some of elements remained as a skylight, some other became wind catchers, some other became solar chimneys, and some other became water tanks. And all these elements, this is the function of all the towers, create this this sophisticated bioclimatical system that permit to use less air conditioning inside of the spaces. And the important thing of this is that this element is not just a formal element, but is a very technical element in some way. So the architectural vocabulary, it's linked with a very precise technical functions. Everything is solved just in one floors with different clusters. You can enter in the cluster through this kind of patio and then move into the studio. There are the gallery, theater, etc., etc. So this is the main entry when you arrive into the light. And the idea is that when you enter, you discover a kind of new place, and so a new microcosm in which we imagine there will be a very exuberant vegetation that will permit also to refresh the space. You can enter through this enclosed garden into the studio. The artist will have, it's really a kind of small town in some way, our small village, in some way. It's an effort to create a place, a destination, more than architecture. Some section through, this is through the enclosed, the patio, which is exterior. This is a porch, essentially, in which the vegetation enter into this porch, and you have to enter into the studios. The section through the studio, always characterized by the window and the skylight. The main gallery in which the artists present their work, And the public spaces have this kind of huge windows in order to blend the garden with the interior spaces. The carpentry is outside, so it's not visible from the inside, and some other spaces, the creative spaces and the auditorium at the end. The artists used to work during the night. They can have the key and enter whatever you want. So every time you will see one light appears, you know that there is an artist like there. Our work is based on that, as we only work and we really forced to be specific for the place and try to highlight the diversity of the different spaces. Thank you.